Hello and welcome to AP Psychology. My name is Mrs. Seguin, and today we're going to be talking about the endocrine system. So we're in our unit discussing the biological basis of behavior. This is unit 2.2. So the endocrine system, and then next part will go over the nervous system. All right, our main objective for today is to discuss the effect of the endocrine system on behavior. Sounds simple enough, right? Okay. First of all, what is the endocrine system? I keep using this word. What is the endocrine system? The endocrine system is made up of several glands that produce the body's hormones. Each gland produces one or more hormones that regulate body processes. The endocrine system is often forgotten about, honestly, but it regulates all of our biological processes in the body from conception through adulthood and into old age. This includes the development of the brain, the development of the nervous system, the growth and function of the reproductive system, metabolism, blood sugar, sleep habits, etc., etc., etc. Everything that you do is regulated by an endocrine gland. Okay, what is the anatomy of the endocrine system? So basically, this is what does it look like in the body. The anatomy here, we have several different glands. Each gland has a different purpose, right? The pineal gland is located in the brain, deep in the brain. This gland produces melatonin. Melatonin, as you probably know, is your sleep hormone. The gland acts as your natural alarm clock. So you'll probably notice that if you're pretty consistent about going to sleep and getting up around the same time, that you won't have to set your alarm clock as frequently anymore. Or if you just have a weekend and you don't want to set your alarm clock, just see what time you get up. It'll probably be sometime around your normal wake up time, right? Okay, so what the pineal gland does is it produces melatonin at night to trigger your brain to start trying to go to sleep or when you're tired, right? And then it reduces that melatonin in the morning to wake you up. So it's your internal alarm clock. The pituitary gland, also located in the brain, is known as your master gland. And basically because it gives the orders to all the other glands for what it's supposed to do. Now, what we don't understand here yet is that the pituitary gland is actually controlled by something else, but we'll get there. In addition, the pituitary gland is in charge of human growth, and so it'll excrete the human growth hormone. Some people have what we call pituitary gigantism or pituitary dwarfism. Basically what that means is that people with pituitary gigantism, the pituitary gland never stopped producing the growth hormone, and so they kept growing and kept growing and kept growing, and these are how you get people that are 8, 9, 10, 11 feet tall. Now that doesn't happen, it seems, as often as pituitary dwarfism, or maybe we're just more interested in a culture in dwarfism. Pituitary dwarfism has something to do with the pituitary gland shutting off or just not producing as much growth hormone for as long as it needed to. And so you end up with people with stunted physical growth. The thalamus, also located in the brain, controls your sensory and your motor behavior and your alertness level. So your thalamus, notice that your motor behavior and your sensory behavior are connected to your alertness level, which is why I tell you when you get tired in the classroom to stand up and walk around for a minute. If you walk around, it can help your brain to become more alert. Okay, the thyroid, located in the throat, right around here, it produces thyroid hormone. It's a super creative name, right? Thyroid hormone, which regulates your metabolism. So you can have hypo or hyperthyroidism. Hypo is a prefix that means basically not enough. Hyper means too much, basically. So if you have hypothyroidism, it can be very difficult to lose weight because your body, no matter what food you're putting in, no matter how much you're exercising, the hypothyroidism, the lack of that thyroid hormone, or the not enough of that thyroid hormone, is going to make it so that it's very difficult for your body to process food. Hyperthyroidism is the opposite problem. So these are for people that really struggle to put on weight because their metabolism is hyperactive. All right, then we get to the thymus, which the thymus is at the base of the throat and into like the upper chest here. The thymus produces white blood cells, which are very important to fight infection. So it is kind of the hub, the manufacturing plant, if you will, for the white blood cells. Then we get the adrenal glands, and you probably know what adrenaline is. Adrenaline is your stress response, otherwise known as your survival response. And of course, this is your flight, fight, or freeze, right? Hopefully we're all fighters, right? The adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. So they're little caps, little triangle hats on top of your kidneys, and they produce the survival response. You'll start to notice when your adrenaline starts to course through your body, if you've ever been on an adrenaline high, your pain sensory collection that gets numbed a little bit, your heart rate spikes, your breathing gets shallow and fast. Your pupils can even dilate just to take in more of what's going on. Your alertness level goes up insanely. If you've ever been on an adrenaline high, you tend to get so much stuff done in such a little amount of time. It's crazy. The pancreas is a digestive organ as much as it is an endocrine organ. And it helps in digestion, right? It produces insulin and glucagon. Insulin and glucagon are the sugar. Basically, they break down the different foods, and if you are deficient in one of them, you can end up with diabetes. Insulin-dependent diabetes basically just means that your body doesn't produce insulin. Now, insulin and glucagon are interesting. They are compatible hormones. They do opposite things, but if you ever have an imbalance of one or the other, they're supposed to balance each other out. So if you ever have an imbalance of one or the other, you can end up with severe digestive issues. The uterus, the ovaries, and the testes, I kind of put all of these together because they work with reproduction. So of course the uterus is basically let's think of it as the lining of the womb, and then we have the ovaries, which produce the egg in the female, and the testes, which produce the sperm cell in the male. These aid towards reproduction. Okay, our third objective is, how does the endocrine system impact behavior? And this is the ultimate question we were trying to answer with this video, right? So first, our hormones regulate our bodies, right? So hormones regulate digestion. Hormones regulate our sleep. Hormones regulate our metabolism. Hormones regulate our literal survival. Thank you, adrenaline. And they impact our reproductive cycle. Ladies, the reproductive cycle, the menstrual cycle that we go through every month as a woman, has to do with a hormonal response. PMS, or premenstrual syndrome, has to do with our hormones. All of a sudden our hormones are kind of off balance, they're out of whack, because we'll have a spike in estrogen, and when that happens, we can get more irritable, we process food faster, so we can get hungry faster. So PMS is a hormonal response. In addition, the endocrine system impacts our stress or our pleasure response. Basically, you are going to tend towards things that create the pleasure response. So some of those neurotransmitters or hormones, they're not the same thing, but we'll get to that. Those are dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, which we'll talk about, versus adrenaline and cortisol. And so dopamine is a neurotransmitter, which really belongs in the nervous system, but I wanted to cover it here as well. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that signals pleasure or fullness. Serotonin is similar, and then oxytocin has a nickname called the cuddle hormone. And basically what that means is, like, it's that hormone that gets emitted when you're getting a hug, when you're getting that physical contact from another human. And it allows your body to breathe and to stop for a minute. Versus adrenaline or cortisol, which are the opposite response. Adrenaline is literally about, we have to survive. Comfort is not an issue right now, we have to survive. And then cortisol is your stress hormone, which if you have cortisol running through your body, fun fact, it's actually very difficult to do a lot of other body processes. Like, for example, people that are super stressed out, we tend towards exercise, except that cortisol can be produced with certain exercises, and it'll prevent your body from actually metabolizing food. And so the hormonal response to the weight loss thing is so interesting. And then we have the nervous endocrine cycle, which basically suggests that the nervous and the endocrine systems work together to regulate our bodies. The nervous system controls the endocrine secretion. So the endocrine system is just glands that secrete hormones. So the nervous system tells the endocrine glands, hey, it's time for you to secrete this. And then the endocrine secretion responds by, secreting the hormone. In turn, those secretions have impacts on the nervous system. For example, if there's a survival situation wherever you are and your adrenaline gland kicks in, So your nervous system is going to go, there's danger, signal the adrenaline glands or the adrenal glands to produce adrenaline. The adrenaline then creates increased heart rate, increased blood flow, shortness of, or not shortness of breath, but shorter and faster breathing to get more oxygen to your body as quickly as possible, higher alertness levels, so on and so forth. It actually shuts down certain unnecessary processes like metabolism. So you don't need to be processing food right now, you need to be surviving. That's what your body and your brain, that's how your body and your brain work together. Okay, in the next lesson when we get to the nervous system, we're going to focus a little more on the neurotransmitters, but for now, I want to just go over a couple really important ones. Dopamine produces sensations of pleasure and reward. This is actually the neurotransmitter that gets stimulated every time you get on social media and you get a like or a heart or a whatever it is on TikTok or Snapchat, right? If you have an imbalance of dopamine, it can cause schizophrenia-induced episodes. It can cause Parkinson's disease. That's important, by the way. You need to know what the neurotransmitter is that leads to Parkinson's disease. Certain drugs can actually affect the dopamine, the transmission of dopamine. And those drugs include cocaine, amphetamines, alcohol, and several others. So sometimes people will have an overproduction of dopamine, and you'll have to put in a dopamine inhibitor. Okay, well, let's get to serotonin. Serotonin regulates your sleep and your dreaming, mood, pain, aggression, appetite, and sexual behavior. So problems associated with an imbalance of serotonin. Serotonin has a nickname called the happy hormone, or the happy neurotransmitter. It creates feelings of happiness, right? So when you have an issue or an imbalance with serotonin, you can end up with depression, certain anxiety disorders, or OCD. Then we get norepinephrine. This is used by the neurons in the autonomic, which we'll get there, nervous system, and by neurons in almost every region of the brain. It controls your heart rate, your sleep, your stress level, your sexual responsiveness, your vigilance, which is basically your alertness, and your appetite. Norepinephrine can cause, or an imbalance of this can cause high blood pressure, can also cause depression. Acetylcholine. This is the primary neurotransmitter used in efferent neurons, which we'll get there. It carries messages from the central nervous system. It's also involved in learning and memory. If you have an imbalance of this, can cause certain muscular disorders because the muscle memory is held in the brain. And then it can cause Alzheimer's. And there are several other neurotransmitters. One of the biggest ones that I want to cover, though, is endorphins. And endorphins are produced anytime you do like stressed physical activity kind of thing. If you've ever noticed when you go exercise really, really hard, you get endorphins. By the way, quick tip, if you ever are just struggling with self-esteem or confidence or overwhelmed with something, go to the gym for like 20 minutes and just run as hard and as fast as you can. It will produce so many endorphins, and then you feel like you can conquer the world afterwards. This creates a pleasurable sensation, and it controls for pain. Problems associated with the imbalance here, you could get lowered levels resulting from an opiate addiction. All right. That's it for today. So in this lesson, we learned the effect of the endocrine system on behavior. So we talked about what even is the endocrine system, first of all. Second, what does it look like in the body? And then third, how does that lead to an effect on your behavior? All right, I'll see you in class tomorrow.